who had some great thoughts that if we are able to just ponder on for a while, we might be able to move our country farther forward than ever before. We'll share some excerpts of that in just a moment. First, though, the West Africa Security Regulators Association, WASRA, in collaboration with the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC of Ghana, brings you the second biennial Capital Market Conference in Accra. It's on the 24th of May at the Mervyn-Pick Ambassador Hotel, and the theme is Deepening and Strengthening the Capital Markets Across West Africa Through Effective Regulation. Keynote speaker is the Vice President, His Excellency Alhaji Dr. Baumia, and of course, special guest of honor is the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, Minister of... Oh, I've said that already, haven't I? Finance Minister. And other speakers from across the globe will be there as well. To register and participate, go to wacmac21.sec.gov.gh, or you can call 0800 1065 or email wacmac21@sec.gov.gh.
So you know one of the best ways to save money from losing its value is to buy something whose value increases over time. And what can you buy? Property. Mm-hmm. Now, with as little as 360,000 Ghana cedis. That's Abade.
Okay.
With as little as 360,000 Ghana cedis. Yes. Mm-hmm. 360,000 Ghana cedis. Sefi Realty is offering you an opportunity to become a landlord. So, just write these numbers down because you would need it. 055143 5555 or 055143 8888. You can also visit nyamidiagh.com. Remember, terms and conditions apply as prices are subject to change without prior notice. And I've been reminding you that prices initially were at 345,000, is now 360,000. So please hurry up and get your house from Sefi Realty. Hurry up because only limited units are available. Sefi Realty, the future of living.
Now, Ghana will host the 57th annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank and the 48th annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the African Development Fund. Now, the 5-day event is on the theme Achieving Climatic Resilience and a Just Energy Transition for Africa. Very relevant to our conversation later today. In attendance will be the President, Ministers of Finance, and governors across the continent will be there. And the meeting will be led by Dr. Akinmuni Adesina, who is the President of the Africa Development Bank Group. It's from the 23rd until the 27th of May 2022 at the Accra International Conference Center. The event is strictly by invitation and accreditation.
Are you ready to wake up the champion in your child today? Don't just wake up your child. Help wake up the champion in them with energy from Milo with Active Go and other foods. Your child needs all the help they can get as they go through their daily activities. And Milo with Active Go contains the natural goodness of malts, milk, and cocoa, and is a source of vitamins B2, B3, B6, B12, C, and D, and iron, calcium, and phosphorus. Energize them with a nourishing cup of Milo every day. Milo Energy to go further. So you talked about the change series on Newsfile, and on Saturday, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, who's Executive Director of CDD Ghana, now he spoke about parties, political parties, and our democracy, and he describes how several public recruitment and job allocations are done on party lines. The PPP's Bridget Jogbenukunu also outlined 5 fundamental changes to improve Ghana's constitution, and she centered her presentation on constitutional amendments. Nana Kofi Akwa, who is a photojournalist, spoke on the topic, sitting on gold and begging for brass. I like that. Sitting on gold and begging for brass. And he describes how there's a culture of cognitive dissonance amongst many Ghanaians and how we fail to hold our leaders accountable. Dr. Kwame Akufu, an Ofinto, a communication expert, spoke on the topic, where are our public intellectuals? Now, he talks about the role of the media in public policy formation. He described the media as a platform for building effective consent. And finally, Professor A.C. Sutherland spoke on the toxic cultures of contemporary Ghana, building upon legacies and the opportunities for rapid transformation. And she touched on a culture of national governance and questioning the efficiency of the duopoly in our politics and the monetization of elections in the country. Let's listen to them.
The party card has become more valuable than the Ghana card. Just look at the sheer amount of investment in advertising and other carrots and sticks we had to throw in for the average Ghanaian to go and queue for a Ghana card. The party card, for the party card, you don't need advertisement at all. In fact, they won't even, they will hide it from you. It's a very scarce commodity. The demand far outstrips the supply, and the supply is kept actually intentionally low by the party executives, because really our parties are not that interested in members. They just want voters. They just want you to vote for them. Members, the fewer the merrier. So there's a number of developments that we're seeing. Protocol, based on partisan criteria, has now come to replace meritocratic and open recruitment into our public services and state enterprise. And what we are talking here is how scarce livelihood opportunities in a very low job creation economy are distributed. And they are distributed now, basically according to partisan criteria. So you see that the party and the state has become basically synonymous. And there's this clear state capture by our parties. And there are no sacred cows in this. All public institutions are up for grabs. Universities, everywhere, even in student unions.
Some important areas for constitutional amendments where there are defects and we must amend would include these 5 fundamental changes that need immediate attention to guarantee some modicum of progress if Ghana is to gain or get any dividends in our last democratic experiment. The 5 areas are as follows. Return power to the people for all Ghanaians to directly elect their district's municipal and metropolitan chief executives without any interference from the president and council government appointees into the district assembly. 2, prohibit members of parliament from being appointed as ministers of state, or else MPs must resign from parliament after their ministerial appointment. 3, strengthen the office of Attorney General by separating it from the Ministry of Justice. 4, introduce a public declaration of assets regime. And 5, clarify the eligibility of Ghanaians in the diaspora to hold public office.
I think as a nation, we have a cognitive dissonance issue, and it threatens our future. Cognitive dissonance is when the choir is singing, "Joy to the world, the Lord is come." But if you watch the faces of the choristers singing, you think they just bit into some unforgiving lemon. Cognitive dissonance is when you lock your shop to go and pray the whole day for God to bless your business. It is when you pay tithe or do sadaqah from stolen money or say, "God bless you," after collecting a bribe. Cognitive dissonance is when we show up at 8, 8:30, 9, 10, for a 7 o'clock meeting, until we develop a new culture where a person's word is their bond and people are held accountable for their words and actions and expect to be held accountable for the promises they make, whether on a political platform or from the pulpit of a church or in the privacy of their home or at the business table. Unless we start expecting accountability for the words we speak, mediocrity will continue to be our bane.
Rather than seek consensus, the public policy process could be instrumental in its rationality. It could be very contentious in its performance, and it could be very divisive in its outcome. My question about where our public intellectuals are, therefore, is situated within our current heavily mediated condition and how media, both mainstream and alternative, perform this social watchdog function, either as meaning makers, and by that I mean interpreters of social and daily happenings, as chroniclers of our civic life, that is to say, bearing witness and placing events on record, or just as sites where rational critical debate occur as a public sphere. If public policy is for the good and interest of the general public, and as citizens, we are duty-bound to partake in its formulation and or implementation, either directly through free expression and debate, or indirectly through our representatives. Then aside boardrooms and privileged access locations where public policy is conducted, our media are one of the sites or conduits through which the process of active engagement between policymakers and the public Okay. If we accept this premise, then the nature of our media, including who owns it, its editorial independence, how it is funded, and whose interest it serves, either for power, for profit, or for public interest, all come together to create a situation where consent is either manufactured, and I'm quoting Herman and Chomsky, or consent is arrived at through rigorous deliberation.
Now, one of my greatest concerns, which seems to be the concern of many of our speakers, is the culture of national governance that has evolved, and especially if we take the last 30 years, of the fourth Republican Constitution, where we opted for multi-party democracy. It's an aspiration to entrench the democratic principles within the framework of constitutional rule, as we've been told. But, and we can be proud of an unbroken process of elections handing over, power from one political tendency to another. But is the duopoly and the normalization of monetization of elections, state capture, a parliament which has shown its potential for greatness but is imploding on itself. Are these the characteristics of a national governance system that we as a people would want? Are we as a people not reduced to watching a contest within a small group of people whose aim is to hold on to power for their own benefit with little accountability to the people? Is this the Ghana we bargained for? Is this the Ghana that our people, our elders fought for, as Amu says in Yenara Assassini?
I found that so fascinating.
Yeah.
I was listening, with rapt attention. It's such a pity that it's only once a quarter that we'll get, to hear some of these things. But it was such a rare treat on Saturday.
It was, Kojo. And, when Bridget Jobenukuno talks about some of the changes, talks about some of the changes that says you should, elect your MMDCEs. I like that so much. Because, if we had elected our MMDCEs, they would not feel attached to the political party that appointed them. Okay? They think that they're there to serve their party and the president who appointed them. And so if, for instance, I complain about my roads in Abokobi, and if citizens complain about their roads, that person elected by the people who take steps in addressing the concerns of the people. Unfortunately, we live in a country where MMDCEs only think about the president who appointed them, the party which they are members of, and the constituency executive of those parties. And like Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh would say, today, the party card is better than even your Ghana card. And that is why you have Ghanaians who have become dishonest and so hold both NPP and NDC cards. Because they believe, oh yes, there are contractors like that. Their belief is that, and they give money to both NPP and NDC.
But is that dishonesty?
Let me finish.
Well,
You're doing what?
That's business strategy.
Business strategy.
Yeah.
Good. Because
Political expediency.
You don't have to hold cards, but certainly contributing to both political parties is just good business.
So you are a member.
Ideally,
of
it should not be ideologically
So
possible.
you're a member of both the NPP and NDC. One man, no problem. You see, that is being strategic. One man who says, I'm a member of both NPP and NDC because the party card is what is going to get him a job. It only tells us one thing. A democracy is not working the way it's expected to work. We need to sit down and begin stock taking and change going forward how we practice our democracy.
Anyway, there's so much more to go into on this. I don't want to talk a lot because we've not got a lot of time. But the one thing I wanted to say about the election of MMDCs, I completely agree. It's an important evolution of our democracy that needs to happen. I just don't agree with the idea that they should be on partisan lines because it defeats the purpose that you described. If people still have to fight for their parties to nominate them to become candidates for MMDC elections, then no doubt they will still owe that allegiance to the party, and they will not be able to separate themselves from pursuing the desires of the party once they are elected. It's the same principle. So there has to be a certain divorce from partisan election at that level. Otherwise, we have simply created another layer of control for political parties. That is the debate that was ongoing before the referendum. And of course, people were very rigid in their positions. And so in the end, the referendum didn't happen. But honestly, there is no point in making it partisan.
But
if you really want to create that, separation, from partisan control of our political space.
the MPP promised to make that position one that will elect people to. In the MPP's manifesto prior to coming into office, it was not said that we are going to make it partisan. Now, President Akufo-Addo and the government felt that was the way to go. The only reason why we didn't have that referendum was because the president felt if it's not partisan, then we're not going to do the election or we're not going to make this possible. In any case, if that's all you needed to deal with 2431 and related articles, it didn't require any touching on 55.3. So that conversation, so far as most of us are aware, was concluded a long time ago. The only reason why it has not happened is because the executive president, who holds so much power, believes that's the only way to go. Maybe if he's not president, this matter will be resolved once again. But it's so obvious. And recently he says we need a broad national consensus. It was so clear that there had been studies. Check the CDD reports. Over 70% wants it one way. That is electing of these DCs. They have outrightly rejected on partisan lines. But still, the government of the day insists that's the only way to go. And until they change their mind, there's no consensus.
Daddy knows best. All right, listen, there was more on Newsfile over the weekend. Ernesto Yeboah, very fascinating contribution on the topic, the courage to imagine. He talked about the need for proportional representation in our politics and talked about how we can decentralize development in Ghana. He says this would be a true representation of citizens' interest in the country. We'll hear him in a moment, but we'll also hear Lamnatu Adam, Executive Director of Asong Taba. She talked about economic and security shocks in this time of recovery, and she contextualized it in gender vulnerability. I thought that was very interesting, and talked about how they are the ones, for the vulnerable, are the ones mostly affected by economic shocks. Kwekwa Wache Ando, we all know Kwekwa Wache. He is an energy expert, vast experience in the private sector, and he talked about energy economic management, the political space, and he described a lack of futuristic planning, or future planning, in our governance systems. And he said, look, the challenges we experienced 15 years ago are the same challenges we're experiencing today, which means we may have Dumso ahead. Afi Agbenyo, gender activist, spoke on gender and social protection. She detailed the absence of a minister at the gender ministry and the progress of the affirmative action bill. Progress or otherwise of the affirmative action bill. And then Dr. Abu Sakara brought it all to a close, talking about redefining our democracy for accelerated development, constitutional reforms now, looking forward for imperatives for agriculture, food security, and economic growth. He just mainly talked about the need to have a referendum, before the next election. Fascinating stuff. Let's hear it.
Proportional representation promotes a politics of conviction. How many of our men and women in politics are in there because of conviction and not because of their stomach or not because of, survival? This is what we are talking about. If we left the likes of Atiq Mohammed, very brilliant guy, yet if we left the likes of Bernard Bonham, brilliant guy, yet politics of conviction has its own place. And if we would allow for that kind of politics in our country, I believe that this country would be the better for it. Now, we also want to make the best use of our human resources, like I have already said. And then one of the things that we are looking at in this new constitution is to strip Parliament of parliamentary representation or constituency representation and just leave that to the DCs. If you want development in your constituency, go to your DC. They will construct the gutters, they will construct the roads, they will build the hospitals. Leave parliament to represent their political parties. And in truth, if we want to be truthful with ourselves, our members of parliament, do they speak to the concerns of their constituency, or they speak to the concerns of their party? On e-levy, how many of them spoke on the concerns of their constituency? And if they did, e-levy would not have been passed. And so let us organize or have a system that allows, us to operate on the principle of honesty. And we believe that proportional representation is one of the ways by which we can do that.
Now, how does this trend of economic hardship also affect gender and vulnerability? We've noticed that only people with voices and representation are heard, as we've seen in the industrial strike, as we've seen in unions asking for increase in salary, asking for increase in ways that will make them comfortable enough to absorb this shock. What about the less privileged? I have been asking. What about the rural women with diversified needs? Women who are pregnant, women who are single-headed households, who have a lot of children to feed by themselves. How about people with disability and the excluded? If all of these people are this hard hit, how about my women who are excluded and are living in alleged witches' camps, who have been forgotten for ages? How are they managing the situation? And I think that this calls for us all to, as a matter of agency, and I think as a matter of agency, to enact, in fact, a very universal social protection program that are adequately funded and that will benefit mainly the poorest people. And I've been asking, I know the social protection bill has been there. What has happening to it? What's happening to it? And I think that it should be a matter of priority. Its passage should be a matter of priority.
My perspective is that there is too much power vested in the executive, and that goes all the way down to the district. We talked about district elections. The president has the power to appoint many of the senior members of the legislature, has the power to appoint boards of state-owned enterprises. And this system we have effectively where it's a winner-take-all pretty much means that we have a 4 to 8 year cycle of political management. What I also believe and what I see is that our political managers are the same as our economic managers in this country. Through the reports of the Electricity Company of Ghana, for instance, or NEDCO under VRA, you will see that their losses, what we call their technical and commercial losses, are over 20%. When you add the collection issues they face, they're over 30%. Guess what? 15 years ago, it was exactly the same. So you have to ask yourself, what progress have we made in those last 15 years to actually bring those losses down, to make the sector efficient? And why is it that these institutions come back to the public and basically say, you've got to give me 100% increase? You're effectively paying for my inefficiencies. And the point really here is lacking that long-term view of how we properly address some of these issues means we're always focusing on the 4 to 8 year cycle. And it is not allowing us to really address the long-term issues that are still with us 10, 15, 20, 40 years on.
Our governance architecture today is making nonsense of who a citizen is. We are subtly developing a class system where some people's voices matter more than others. I think this is an affront to our democracy, especially when we are participating, when we are practicing participatory development, democracy, if I can put it that way. The management of public institutions are handed over to people like birthrights. They step into these positions feeling entitled to champagne lives. They disrespect long-serving public officials and time-tested system to their own benefits. They're not doing this to disrupt system for the good, no. They do this for their own benefit. More than ever, the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection is leaderless, with a caretaker minister who is undoubtedly overwhelmed by her own responsibilities. In such difficult times, which we all agree, all speakers have mentioned that times are difficult, the most vulnerable of us, the most marginalized of us, require innovative interventions from government to survive. But there's no ministry taking care of that. The only time the minister's absence bothered the presidency was when the minister was needed as a parliamentarian to cast her vote for the e-levy bill to be passed. In actual fact, a levy that was even going to aggravate our situation. That's when she was needed. The affirmative action bill, as mentioned by Madam Lamatu, and I reiterate here, has not seen any significant progress over the years.
This morning, my task has been made easier because almost all the presenters, after making their presentations, have traced the source of our tribulations back to the Constitution. And I think for us in the national interest movement, this is a very important pivotal moment because it shows that persistence over a period of more than 6 years has brought the issue of constitutional reforms from the rear to the front, where it is now part of the national discourse. And so many actors are joining hands to push for what we are asking for now, which is a referendum before the next election. And the circumstances demand this. Both the internal circumstances in the country and, of course, the external circumstances in the world around us. And we cannot have the luxury of continuing business as usual when all around us we see all the familiar things, a milepost that we were so comfortable with, falling over and changing, almost as if the very earth we stand on itself was moving from under our feet. It will be folly to continue to do business as usual. And that is why, after 30 years of the 1992 Constitution, we must reform the Constitution now, and we must have a referendum before the next election.
So yeah, fascinating stuff in this second half of speakers, change speakers, and I've got to say, look, I can't wait for the next one. Some really eye-opening thoughts there. Again, the Constitution coming under quite a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? I'll call it criticism. Because it is appearing to be less and less fit for our purpose. As the years go by, as our democracy evolves, we are starting to find it more of a constriction, than a constitution to guide us, into the future. So many speakers pointing out this important fact. Kwekwa scared me a little bit, I have to say. The power situation, because he's right. It's a mirror of what we had just over a decade ago.
That's true.
So... And nothing has changed. So are we not simply headed in the same direction again? We need more capacity. The thing that we
caught X6 a couple of months or years ago.
We are now being told we don't have anywhere near enough if we don't want the lights to suddenly go off in about 3 years.
It's not shocking to me. Is there anything we have fixed permanently in this country? You ask yourself that. Is there any major problem we have fixed permanently? Maybe time will make some of them irrelevant and all of that, but I cannot recall any major issue in this country. Let's go education. What have we done to fix education permanently? The health sector. How have we fixed it permanently? Now, other sectors of the economy, well, agriculture, for example. What have we really done to fix it permanently? So, changing the structure of the economy in general, what have we done to fix it? Today, we are still import-driven. Once in a while, we do export. We pretend to ourselves that we are doing import substitution industrialization which is not really working anyway. It will show. It would affect your exchange rate. It will affect the other indices if it actually is what you're doing. And when prices are galloping, you see the impact on these. So it tells you that for whatever years we have been as a country, we've basically been going in circles and not making the advancement that we think or ought to be making. But the question remains now, who caused up? Some have put it squarely at the doorstep of the Constitution. I remember Professor Ramana Tukba did a lecture some time ago at the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences and called it "Be Constitution We Go Chop." I mean, he outlined what the elements of our Constitution is and what ought to be changed if we really want to make any changes to it. But I agree perfectly that the Constitution was not really put together with the hope of having a prosperous nation in mind. We just wanted stability and transition working, because the parts where I feel most of us will be directly affected, the directive principles of state policy, are but mere suggestions to many people in the state. We know that. We know that's how it's worked over the years. So the part where it says, for example, that as far as practicable, we should continue previous government's work. We use as far as practicable as the main reason why we cannot continue previous government's work.
It's irony because the thing is called directive.
Yeah.
Principles
of state policy.
I can't think of a less optional title
Yeah.
for a document. But we treat it like like you said, a bunch of suggestions.
Yes. So whether we actually find our ways to just throw it away and not fix it within the range.
What's the wording? As far as possible.
Yeah, as far as practicable.
As practicable.
Yeah.
So we think as far as practicable means that there will be some cases in which it's not practicable. In other cases, it will be practicable.
Yeah.
But that's not what it means. It means that we must continue everything.
Yeah.
And you must continue it as far as practicable.
Brilliant.
That's what the Brofu means. Continue everything that your previous government did, but continue it as far as practicable.
But we have construed it to mean no. If you watch it, if you think you can do it, do it. If you think you cannot do it, don't do it. But you see, that's the kind of structure we have run. So I ask again, for example, let's settle on flooding. From the 60s, 1923, there are reports on flooding. 1923, the floods in Accra, we planned how we're going to do it from the colonial government's time. This is 2022. If mostly you can't fix problems, it becomes advanced, so you deal with the more advanced ones. We have not dealt with the basic ones yet. The state of Ghana is our state of flooding. Flooding shows you that we are not thinking. We've not been able to solve the smallest problems, and that's why we have always positioned them. And listen, this year we talk about floods. Next year we talk about floods. In fact, June 3, we formed a committee because people died. Because a huge number of people died, and international media was actually talking about it. But for that, there will not be any committee because we know how to deal with floods. It tells you that no matter what you will say, the people that you give power to today only care about the next election. The next flooding is not really a problem because after floods, the next morning it would have been cleared. People would have lost things, but it would have been cleared. Mostly politicians don't die during floods. If it happened that way, I'm sure that would be more serious. We would have been taking a more serious issue than we're supposed to be.
We'll be discussing it in Parliament today.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, look, so much was brought out for our consideration in the change series. There'll be more. Right now, though, I think it's time for us to take a few messages. When we come back, climate change. Flooding is a direct result of it. We're getting into that and more when we return.
The West African Securities Regulators Association, WASRA, in collaboration with the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC of Ghana, brings you the second Biennial Capital Market Conference in Accra, Ghana. Date 24th May 2022 at the Mövenpick Ambassador Hotel. Theme: deepening and strengthening the capital market across West Africa through effective regulation. Keynote speaker: His Excellency Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Baumia, Vice President of the Republic of Ghana. Special guest of honor: Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Ghana, and other speakers from across the globe. For registration and participation, visit www.wacmac21.sec.gov.gh. You can also call 0800 100065 or email wacmac21@sec.gov.gh.
When the world looks at my child, they just see an energetic 8-year-old. But I see more. My Lucy is going to become captain of her school volleyball team, keep excelling in class, and do great things one day. I see a champion. So when I give her Milo with her breakfast every day, it's all part of waking up the champion in her.
Don't just wake up your child, wake up the champion in her. Let Milo with Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa help wake up the champion in your child every day. Milo, energy to go further. Milo! This advert is FDA approved.
The car looks a time person. It's ready to begin its Uber journey. I heard that did you hear that they've reduced service fee to 20% instead of 25%? So as a driver, you make more money. Did you hear that Uber is celebrating 6 years in Ghana this year? Part of the 6th anniversary celebrations, Uber is rewarding drivers for continuing to take trips. So what did you hear? This year is Uber's 6th anniversary in Ghana. As a driver using Uber, all you have to do is keep taking trips and you could win many great prizes. Drive with the world's leading ride-hailing service. Earn 5% more from your trips. And you could win prizes in the 6th anniversary giveaway. Sign up now.
To clean an LPG tank, fill the tank with water. This forces out the remaining gas in the tank. Then release the water. The cleaner should wear appropriate protective clothing such as gas mask, goggles, boots, and gloves. LPG tanker vehicles should have appropriate warning inscriptions such as written warning signs, reflectors, and flashing lights. Storage tanks should be inspected regularly for rust and damages. Service providers should be called in when a defect is detected. A message from the National Petroleum Authority.
Imagine say water wake up at dawn. You know both. You know chop. Where it vanish for your area for 2 weeks. You not get one drop safe inside